Good morning, everybody. On this wonderful Monday morning, the 27th of April, I would like to bring you up to date on the political situation in Israel. Now, I must say, throughout these past few weeks, actually, we're going on almost 2 months with the coronavirus really taking over the most prominent positions in the headlines and in the news today. The actual activity surrounding the establishment of a government in Israel. We did have elections at the beginning of March, and today, April 27th, we still don't have a government, although we are on our way to a government. This has come much less into the foreground than it usually would. The corona headlines is just pushing it to a side. But we are still quite involved in putting together a government. Now, as you may recall, this was the third election in a year, and the results of this election, like all the others, led us to a stalemate. Now, one of the things that I must emphasize here is that this stalemate is not a result of an ideological stalemate. There is still a definite majority in Israel for right-wing ideological positions, whether those positions be with regard to the economy, or more importantly, whether they be with regard to security and other national interests, including the settlement movement. One of the most significant things that happened with regard to the settlement movement during this past year, of course, was the announcement by President Trump of his plan of the century, which included the opportunity for Israel to unilaterally annex part or all of the areas that where there are Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. Not all area C, but yes, all of the areas where the communities themselves are located, and with possibilities to include some of the areas surrounding the existing building or built up areas of those communities. At the time that plan was announced, of course, there was no maps drawn or prepared for this annexation, and that may be one of the reasons why the annexation did not take place right away. Another reason was that shortly after the dramatic announcements, and in fact Netanyahu's own announcement that he was planning to begin annexation immediately, in fact the following week, Jared Kushner came out with a statement on behalf of the American administration that said he was asking Israel to hold off on that this was not something that should be rushed into and should wait till after the elections. Now, those of us on the right here in Israel were very concerned with that statement because we knew that it was not going to be so simple for Netanyahu to put together a government, in the same way that it was not simple for him to put a government together after the last two elections. And the reason being that despite ideological support for right-wing positions, including a majority, even today, a solid majority in the Knesset in favor of unilateral annexation of the communities in Judea and Samaria. However, there has developed tremendous hatred, antipathy towards Netanyahu himself, which has caused some right-wing leaders and politicians to leave the Likud party and move into Kahol Lavan, the blue and white party headed by Gantz. Given that situation, as a result of the results of these last third elections, it became clearer than ever that either these two parties had to find a way to come together, or we would go to fourth elections, and fourth elections is certainly not something anybody wanted. And given the corona crisis that developed afterwards and the economic crisis that ensued, nobody wants fourth elections. It would be an absolute disaster for the nation. Given all that, Benny Gantz, the head of the Blue and White Party, agreed to go in with Netanyahu into a national unity government, but in the process lost more than half of his party, or about half of his party. So he now came into this coalition agreement with 17 members of Knesset. Netanyahu, together with the other right-wing communities that have functioned as a bloc, have 59. So on the one hand, 59 seats is not enough to command a majority in the government. On the other hand, 59 is a lot more than 17. And that really is what produced the agreement we have, an agreement that even though Gantz only has 17 seats, he gets parity in the number of ministers in his government, so that practically every one of his members of Knesset will end up being ministers, which is insane. That may change a little bit because just last night, Amir Peretz, the head of the Labor Party, that party decided to also join this unity government. However, they've made it very clear that they are not joining a right-wing government. They are joining a unity government, and Peretz himself has insisted that he will have to have the ability to influence the economic agendas, moving it towards a social democratic economic agenda, as well as being definitely against unilateral annexation of Judea and Samaria. However, in any case, Peretz has very few. He has 6, I believe, seats, 6 or 7 seats. So his influence is going to be minimal. It looks today, however, that as a result of this compromise, as much as we are very happy that there is going to be a government and hopefully more stability, we are very unhappy in some of the key portfolios that were given to Gantz's party, including Foreign Ministry, the Defense Ministry, and Justice. Now, from the settlement point of view, the two most important portfolios are Defense and Justice. If indeed Israel annexes the communities in Judea and Samaria, then the Justice Department will have less of a significant say, because then those communities, theoretically, under the law, will be treated very similar to similar communities all over Israel, and we will see far less of the unfair and very often unjust destruction of homes over technicalities. On the other hand, if the biggest question, of course, is will annexation go forward? Now, this is something that Gantz did agree that it could be brought forth before the government, before the Knesset on the 1st of July. And we do know that if it does come before the Knesset, there will be a majority and it will pass. The question is, what will it have to go through in the government? Will it come before the Knesset? Because it's the government that usually prepares that sort of legislation. Will Bibi and the right have to compromise in the extent to which they're going to annex, at the rate at which they are going to annex, in order to appease Gantz? And this is a huge, huge question mark. The other question mark that is of most concern to me is the position of the Yamina party. Yamina is a party that's led by Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked, two very, very talented right-wing people. This is a party that represents religious Zionist values, so it means they're not only right-wing in their support of the settlement movement and other strategic and economic issues, but they are also very much the flagship for religious values within the religious Zionist context. They are not ultra-Orthodox in a more separatist view. They are supporting religious values in a way that is inclusive and that reaches out to the entire nation. Very, very important. And unfortunately, possibly because of personal issues between Netanyahu and Bennett that go back many, many years, and possibly for other political reasons, until this point, Netanyahu has not yet offered Bennett and that party, the Yamina party, portfolios at all. He says he will, but he's not yet made that offer. And this, of course, is of great concern. Yamina itself is saying if they don't have the ability to influence and to make sure that some of their most important issues, such as the continued development of the settlement movement, if these issues are not protected in this government, they will not join. Now, of course, Netanyahu has a government without Yamina, but Yamina in the opposition could become a more significant force towards future elections. So this is the situation as we see it right now. More question marks than anything else. It does look we're going towards a government where Bibi will be the prime minister for the first year and a half, and Gantz will be the prime minister the following year and a half. But exactly what that's going to look like and what they're going to do, I guess you're just going to have to stay tuned for my next update when we do have more news. Thank you so much. Have a great day.